Welcome in this short video about Raging Fire, the last film of Benny Chan, a big actioner, a big co-production between Hong Kong and mainland. Before I start talking about what I thought of the film, which I saw today, I just want to precise that I'm not going to do this kind of critique too often on the channel because I don't really want the channel to be inundated by this kind of video. I want to have videos which are a bit deeper, which are covering wider subjects, and to be more interesting than just an accumulation of critique film by film. So I won't do it too often, but sometimes when there are some expectations, when there are people or a lot of people who are waiting for a film, I will sometimes do it, and I hope you will find it interesting, but don't expect to see this kind of format too often. And another disclaimer before I start really talking about Raging Fire, I think I need to precise my stance toward Benny Chan. So I think Benny Chan is a good filmmaker. He's a good yes man, I want to say, which may not be that flattering, but what I mean by that, I think is someone who is able to do some very entertaining action films. I actually like many of his films. I enjoy a lot Moment of Romance, his first film, which I think is his very best film actually. But there are many action films he has done which I have enjoyed. I like Big Bullet, I like Genix Cops. I'm probably the only guy in the world who likes Genix Cops, but yeah, I do. Sincerely, I like New Police Story. I like Who Am I? I like White Storm. I think White Storm was really good. Just too bad that he got carried away in the last third of the film with this stupid twist. Otherwise, he probably had his masterpiece there. But so there are quite a few films I like from Benny Chan. But at the same time, that's not a director I consider as the very best of Hong Kong. Because I find his movie way too inspired by Hollywood. He's trying too much to ape Hollywood to my taste, and because of that he loses a bit of the Hong Kong identity, and that's something I'm very aware and I'm very concerned about. I really like my Hong Kong film to have as much Hong Kong flavor as possible, and sometimes with Benny Chan it feels too much like Hollywood to my taste. And also his characters are never really that developed, never really deep. It rarely has real message to put in his film. So it's always, or quite often, very entertaining, but it's really never going further than that. And at the same time, I think I need to precise that he can be also pretty bad sometimes. I mean, he has some awful films to his credit, films like Meow, like Gen Y Cops, Water Hero, City Under Siege. My God, those films were awful. So yeah, a good filmmaker, but nothing more than that, in my opinion. And so that will be no surprise for you after this introduction that I thought that Raging Fire was a good Benny Chan, a good action film, a very solid action blockbuster, but that's nothing more than that. That's it. That's a good film, a good action film, but nothing more. So don't expect anything more than that because it's his last film. Don't think he's going to correct his usual flaws. No, that's typical Benny Chan there. So you will have a film which is beautifully shot. The photography is gorgeous. All the technicians involved in the film have done a great job. You have some marvelous shots of Hong Kong. Hong Kong, by definition, by essence, is a film which is extremely cinematographic, so you don't necessarily have to do a lot in order to get some beautiful shots, but still he has done a good job. He has managed to really capture the city in the best light possible, with some drone shots, with many nice setups, with a very well handled direction with an art direction as well, which is very solid. So all the technical packaging is really flawless. You also have a nice soundtrack by Nicolas Herrera, who has become a bit the de facto composer of Benny Chan. I mean, he already did Shaolin with him, and I think that's also him who did Call of Heroes, if I remember correctly. And once again, he delivers here a solid soundtrack for the film. A bit too much influenced by the Hollywood standard, in my opinion. There is a bit of this Hans Zimmer vibe with this kind of rhythm, this kind of which are efficient, which work. That works in the film, but it lacks a bit of personality and creativity. But once again, it works for the film. So all the technical aspects are top notch, and of course we have some good actors in front of the camera. Donnie Yen is solid. Nicolas Tse is quite charismatic as the bad guy. I think he really is aging pretty well, and he brings a solid presence in the film. And at the same time, we have a lot of old timers. We have Ray Loy, we have Simon Yam, we have Ben Lam. So it's always a pleasure to see them in this kind of big production, and a wide array of supporting characters, supporting cast, which if you are familiar with Hong Kong cinema for the last 10 years, many of those faces are kind of usual, and they are always solid. They are always able to give some good performance. So everything in front and behind the camera is very solid when it comes to the technical aspect. And the action is also very well done. There are like 4 big action pieces in the film. They come at the pacing. I mean, you always have enough action scenes so that you are not going to be bored. They will come when it's needed. You will have a wide array of action. You will have some fist fights, you will have some gunfights, you will have some chase which are on foot, chase which are with different vehicles. So there is really a wide selection, a wide variety there, which is very welcome, and it's well handled by Benny Chan and the action director. The action director is Donnie Yen, but there is also involved Kenji Tanigaki, who is the right-hand man of Donnie Yen for more than 20 years actually, and with a very good action director in his own right. Is the guy behind the Kenshin series. You also have Didi Cookin Chu, who is the former right-hand man of Yuen Woo-ping, and who is a very good action director, choreographer in his own right as well. And so, of course, we have a lot of talent there, and so it delivers when it's on screen. There are some pretty good gunfight, some strong impact when it comes to the chase scenes, when it comes to some of the stunts. There are, as I said, there are 4 main action set pieces, and the best one in my opinion are the second one and the final. The second one sees Donnie going into some kind of modern version of the Kowloon Wall City, so an area where the police is not able to enter, so it's full of criminals, and he finds himself under siege when he's trying to get his hand on Ben Lam. And so there is a real tension. There is a good build-up to the scene, and when it finally gets aggressive, when the action really starts, that makes for a very exciting scene. And we have a short fight between Ben Lam and Donnie Yen, so it's nice to see those 2 legends of Hong Kong action cinema duck it out on the screen. Even if it's a bit too short to my taste, I would have preferred to have a longer fight between Donnie and Ben, but still what is there is good. And the final is pretty good too. It's pretty long. You have a very long gunfight, which is basically Benny Chan remaking It, Michael Mann's It, the very famous sequence when the bad guy led by De Niro are shooting at the police in the street. So you have the same thing here, shot in Tsim Sha Tsui on the Canton Road, which is one of the main streets of Tsim Sha Tsui, which is a street which was like the favorite street of Chinese tourists, at least before 2019. So it's really nice to see a big, ambitious gunfight scene being shot there in a place which is very familiar if you are living in Hong Kong or if you have been to Hong Kong. So it's really well done, well handled. And then after the action moved to a church in which we will have the duel between Nicolas Tse and Donnie Yen. And here we have Benny Chan kind of adopts the James Cameron rule of final with different climax, different sequence. And so there are like 3 sequences during this final duel. One which is Donnie Yen fighting Nicolas Tse with weapon. So Nicolas is using some butterfly knives, and Donnie is using the regular police stick. So it's kind of a variation, remake of the famous SPL alley fight with Wu Jing. But I must confess it's a little bit underwhelming. I find the SPL fight actually better, and that's because Donnie gets back to his style from the end of the 90s, when he was kind of starting as an action director, as a choreographer on films like Legend of the Wolf. And sometimes when he was doing those films, he was a bit messy. He was trying to do too much, and he was losing the crispiness of the martial arts move, trying to create this kind of fog of war. It was a bit his style back then, and there is a bit of that here, and I don't like it that much. It becomes a bit messy, and I like when we have some more crystal clear move. And we don't really have that, and so I find this sequence a bit disappointing, at least less well handled than in SPL comparatively. It's not a disaster. I mean, it's still fairly entertaining, but if, like me, you have fairly high standards with this kind of scenes, then you may be a bit disappointed on this one. But fortunately, after this weapon sequence, we have a real fist fight between Nicolas and Donnie, and here it really gets high quality work. We have some crisp martial arts move, we have a lot of violence and impact, and that's really the moment I thought, okay, that's it, it's on, that's really going to deliver there. And that's my favorite part of the action in Raging Fire. So it's a really nice sequence. Nicolas actually is up to the challenge. He is physically convincing against Donnie, and that's really a good thing. And then you have a final sequence where they are just taking whatever they can put their hands on, fighting like crazy with a big hammer or a screwdriver, these kind of things. There is also a piano in this sequence, and you see Donnie using Nicolas' head to play piano. So I guess it's a nod, a funny nod to his piano skills, which makes it quite entertaining if you know this reference. So when it comes to the action, thanks to this different sequence, Raging Fire delivers. So if you want a big production, an entertaining action film, you will get it through. You will get it in Raging Fire thanks to these well-made action scenes. But as I said, at the same time, it remains first and foremost a Benny Chan film, and that means that the story is very conventional. There is nothing impressive there. The characters are not necessarily caricature, but they are not very deep. There is an attempt to make them a bit more human, but it still remains fairly superficial, and sometimes it's not that well orchestrated when it comes to the main bad guys, because the film tries to humanize them, but it also tries to show them as some very cruel characters, and so you cannot really go in those two directions, and sometimes it's a bit contradictory, and I'm not sure it really benefits to the film. You also have some big suspension of incredulity when it comes to the way the police manage to keep track of the bad guys. You can feel that the story is not the main purpose of the story is to deliver action scenes, and sometimes in order to achieve that they have to make it easier with the transitions, and so it's not that convincing when it comes to the development of the story. One interesting factor when it comes to the story is the fact that the police is shown as fairly violent. So that's the case of the main bad guys who were former police officers and who ended up becoming gangsters because they had been kind of manipulated by their hierarchy, but because they were already quite violent in the first place. And I think that's something you need to incorporate if you are doing a modern police story in Hong Kong nowadays, because after the events of 2014 and the events of 2019, you cannot just pretend that the Hong Kong police is all white knight, is all perfect and really trying to protect everybody. That's not the case. We have seen it, and so in this aspect the film tries to incorporate that, and I think that's a good thing. But at the same time, that leads to some other problems, because while the main character, while Donnie's character is shown as a policeman who is incorruptible, is not that black and white himself. He can sometimes rely on violence in order to get the information he needs. And so at the end of the day, you don't really know if you should really root for this guy. He's not that sympathetic. He has some strong principle on some aspect, but not necessarily on some others. And while it makes it realistic, at the same time, you don't know if you really should root for him, and so that's a weird feeling there. But maybe I'm a bit oversensitive on these kind of issues because I'm living in Hong Kong and because I've been witness to some of these events, and so that was kind of problematic. And so for me, I'm more sensitive, and if you are elsewhere in the world, maybe you will be less worried about this kind of issues and you will be less concerned about that. Another flaw, in my opinion, when it comes to the structure and the story of Raging Fire is the length. The movie is 2 hours long, and I think it's too long. And I think the movie could have easily cut 30 minutes. And I have a precise time frame. It's actually the fourth of the film, which in my opinion could have been cut all together. And this sequence is basically Nicolas Tse going to the police station. Then you have an old sequence with a guy who has a bomb and who is forced to take hostage, and then after that you have some kind of commission which Donnie has to be present at. And all these sequences, I think, are cliche and doesn't really bring anything new to the table. The fact that Nicolas is going to the police station, that's the kind of thing we have seen in so many Hollywood films, in Skyfall. I mean, it has become a cliche of Hollywood films, so there is no need to redo it here. On the face-to-face between Nicolas and Donnie is not that powerful, so no need to keep it. The sequence with the bomb, it's also something we have seen, but this time in many Hong Kong films, and we have seen it too many times. It doesn't really help the story going into a better direction, so in my opinion it could be cut. And the commission part, the disciplinary commission part, is the worst. It's basically when Donnie is trying to to show his philosophy of policing, and it's very heavy indeed. It's not subtle at all. It's this kind of cliche of the police against its hierarchy. We have seen it many times, and it always lacks subtlety. It's always simplistic, and this one certainly is not an exception. So for me, this whole sequence could be cut. These whole sequences could be cut, and then we save 30 minutes. We end up with a movie which is around 90 minutes long, and I think that's perfect. Then we got an actioner who is completely aware of what it is, so a big budget actioner, and we don't try to be more serious or be more intelligent, because it cannot deliver on those aspects. So in my opinion, it could have easily made without those 30 minutes. Weirdly also, we have some throwback to Hong Kong cinema of the 90s. We have a Vietnamese gang, we have kidnapping of tycoon, and those things were stuff we saw in many Hong Kong films from the 90s, but back then it made sense because there was indeed a real trend of kidnapping tycoons in the first half of the 90s in Hong Kong. There was also a Vietnamese issue in Hong Kong around that time because of the Vietnamese refugee, but that's not the case at all in the Hong Kong of 2021. That makes no sense. These things are no issues anymore at all. So it's a bit weird to have it there. Maybe there was a way for Benny Chan to do a nod to his career in the 90s, but I didn't find it really fitting there. It's not a big problem, but they could have made without it, in my opinion. So yeah, Raging Fire, a big blockbuster full of action, and on that it delivers. Benny Chan has managed to provide a very entertaining action film, but don't expect anything more than that. That's just that, an entertaining big budget actioner, and that's fitting. I think that's fitting for Benny Chan because that's exactly what he has always delivered, what he has always been good at, and he doesn't outdo himself there. He does what we like him for, but that's pretty much it, and that's who you will have when you will see Raging Fire. Having said that, I'm still inviting you to watch the film if it is released in your country, if it is released in theater, or if it is released on DVD or Blu-ray. The film is entertaining, and we don't have that many big action modern films set in Hong Kong nowadays, so when we have some, we should support them, and this one is well made. There is many good action scenes, as I said, so you will still enjoy it enough so that it's worth your money, so go check it out in any case. That's it for this short review, maybe not so short, review of Raging Fire. Keep watching Hong Kong film, keep watching Asian film, and I will see you very soon on another video for the House of Asian Cinema.